Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Zoo. Today we are finally going to be building our reptile centre, and as you can see I've already changed a few things from last episode and just properly mapped this out a little bit more, but we're going to be diving in and hopefully finishing the entire outer structure and some of the interior decorating, and in our next episode we're looking to complete the entire build before moving on to doing some touch-ups in the Wild Africa exhibit and a few other things. So this space is going to be for our saltwater crocodile with a smaller enclosure, as you can see just at the top of the screen there. That's going to be for the turtles. Now at some point I think I will be separating the Aldabra and the Galapagos giant tortoise, but right now they're okay in the same habitat. Now at the moment it's probably going to be very basic. I'm just tidying up these barriers here. It doesn't seem to want to shift, so we'll put an extra couple in. And in the future we'll look to kind of develop it a little bit more, just to make sure that it looks really nice and well built. Just going to tidy up a little bit of this saltwater crocodile habitat and remove a little bit of water so that there's a bit more of a landmass for them to explore, and then we'll put the water back in. What I may do is completely flip this entire habitat on its head at some point and have a little downstairs area so that we can actually see some diving saltwater crocodiles, but at the moment I'm quite happy with how it is. I would like to bring that underwater viewing habitat back into play like we have in the original, but for now this is going to look really good, and I'm quite excited to have a part indoor part outdoor sort of habitat. This tortoise one I may actually flip on its head as well and have their shelter on the inside of the building and coming outside, and then just reroute some of the public path so that it can go right next to it. But at the moment where it is, they're getting a bit stressed out and scared quite a bit. It could be because it's a small enclosure and there are two different types of tortoise in there and there's 6 of them, but we don't know. So we are speeding things up now and just really getting into it, just working out where my staff are going to come in so that it's not too invasive and interfering with the public pathways. And for now I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So what we're going to have in the actual main interior of the building is a load of exhibits for lizards, frogs. We'll even put the new terrapin in there as well, and it's just a case of making sure that there's enough space for people to walk around and enjoy each exhibit, but also making sure that I don't interfere with it. There were a couple of issues with this build where I kind of got the spacing a little bit off and the pathing was a bit of an issue, and as you can see here we've got a few problems with things poking out, so I think I actually ended up moving the entire structure just a little bit to match up with the path. And as you can see there's no kind of overlapping there from the exhibits anymore, and we're putting in some new walls just to get everything back up to scratch and have things looking uniform. And we then put the barriers back in. So you can see there's a couple of points where the walls don't quite match up, and we've got those little 1 pixel by 1 pixel squares that we need to fill in, and we will do that eventually. I'll put some nice beams in and stuff when we actually do the exterior decorating, which will be in a future episode, probably the next one after this. For now we just want to make sure that we get all of the interior well designed and implemented. I'm really looking forward to this build, and it's been a long time coming, because it's actually the first kind of semi-sizable build that I'm going to be doing that is an interior location. We've done that Wild Africa, which was just a huge habitat with a small kind of viewing area and the shops, but this is actually the first big interior build that I've done. And when I've done these builds in the past or tried to experiment with them, I've always gone for these 2-floor structures, and it's the second floor where everything tends to mess up. So I'm not going to be doing a second floor on this one. It's just going to be a nice huge building, probably going to go 8 meters high on the roof on the inside so that we can do some lovely advertising above our habitats and stuff. That I'm really looking forward to. We're going to be using some of the new custom screens, and that's going to have pictures of all of the animals that are in the habitat on there. And we're just actually going to import them from the Planet Zoo wiki, because I could have gone with real pictures of the animals, but also like I hope this channel gets monetized at some point, and that won't happen if I use copyrighted imagery from genuine nature photographers in my builds. So we've gone with the stuff from the wiki because they were all taken using the game engine and I can use them safely. But I'm really looking forward to playing around with them and getting those implemented. It's actually a really exciting time now that they've brought those things out, because you can do so much more with the creativity of things, and you can even like design your own. I've seen designs where people have put their own zoo logos in there and things like that, which I think looks really cool, and made brand new descriptions and things for animals to go alongside their exhibit boards, which I think is another great idea. But I'm just going to keep it simple with some pictures for now, and we will get to that stage at some point, but for now I'm happy with where we are. So here we are, just mapping out some internal walls for the exhibits. I had an idea to have them all glassed off, but then you already get a bit of glass on the exhibit itself, so eventually we took these out. And the idea was to fill them in with planters, and then we increased the size of these interior walls and put in some nice African pillars. Now I know a lot of the species that we're going to have in here aren't really native to Africa, but I wanted to keep the theme from the Wild Africa exhibit and habitat coming through into this one, because they are all part of the same area, and I wanted to make sure that some of that architecture was present throughout. But we will be kind of using a mix, as you can see, of Australia and New World themes. I think they gel quite nicely, but we do still have some bamboo in there as well from the Asia packs. And other than that, it's just kind of this mishmash of things, because I suppose there is a mishmash of species in here from different biomes and different continents. So here we are, sticking with plaster all the way through. I think it just gives you a lot more of a colour palette to play with, and you can mix and match things really well. Now, I've not put any exhibits in here for now, and that's because I'm not sure what to do with this area. I don't want to overload it with exhibits, because the guests will stop at every single one. So I think I'd rather have some different items in here. Maybe education boards that draw attention to real issues like climate change, the bee population dying out, and stuff like that. But that's something that I can think about a bit later on in the episode. For now, I just want to kind of put an under construction type series of walls in here. So I'm mapping out, again, just some guides for myself for when I come back to it, so that I know where everything is and can make things uniform. And I think just this is another project altogether. I will probably do like a grid-based zoo for my next one, because I've run into a lot of trouble building this one, and I want to give myself a bit of an easier ride next time. So once again, these Africa posts going all the way up, and we'll just find a way to make that work, because at the moment it does look bare, it does look flat, there's no real like colour scheme in there, and it all looks a little bit too boring. But mark my words, by the end of this episode you'll not be saying that. So while the camera's flying around like mad, we are taking out all of the glass, and then we're filling these with various types of flora and fauna, just to create some nice backdrops in between these exhibits. I had thought about filling these with water, but I don't think that's going to work. So we're just putting in some trees, a few plants and a couple of rocks, and then we'll maybe use some of the mist effects just to give it a little bit of an extra dimension and make it really pop. Now I'm not sure as well, because as you can see we go up 2 floors with, well, we go up 8 meters with this, and I'm only decorating the first 4, which is like the visible area for guests. It may well be that in future or later on I cap off this 4 meter zone and just make it like a black painted plaster roof, and then we could put some maybe skylights in. I had a bit of like a play around with what lighting I wanted for it, and I ended up settling on the stadium lights, I think, but made the actual lighting colour black so that it softened the light a little bit more, because when you just use that harsh light, it really like brightens up a space, and it gives you this really obvious circular ring of light around something, especially if you got it quite close up like these lights were. So if you soften that by making it like a black light or a grey light, it really softens that ring, and you don't get such a harsh lighting effect on there. And because I don't think I've researched everything from the lighting category, so it kind of made sense to do that for now. But if I then cap off that 4 meter area, we could make like little skylights or something with stars, and then make like a blue plaster one for a daylight theme. So as you can see here, we've gone with a custom billboard. and we've done like a scaled backdrop for it. And this is going to be our big sign that's going to alert everyone to everything that's going on in here. We're just highlighting all of the plaster, and we're going to make this brown, just because I think that frames that really nicely, and it gives it a lovely little border. And then right across here, we're going to put in our sign. And I went for sensational scales, because most of the animals in here have scales. Do frogs have scales? No, they have like skin, basically. But yeah, most of the things in here have scales. We've got, well, we're going to have when I finally put them. Oh no, I have put them in at this point. I can never remember when I put things in. So what we have in here are the yellow poison dart frog, the terrapins, the Gila monster, a boa constrictor, the rattlesnake, and the green iguana, I think was the last one we went for. And try as I might for this sign, I could not find an exclamation point. I don't know if there is one, so I ended up using a letter I and a full stop to make it work. So as you can see, we kept that brown border going all the way around the top and finished it off with some bamboo, because I thought that added a nice contrast. At the back wall there, you can see the sign for our tortoises, which I think looks really cool, just pointing them to where their habitat is. Obviously, the habitat's bare bones, but we've given them a place where they can leave and hide and put a little pond in there for them. Then the crocodile habitat, which we haven't really worked on much, but here you can see everything fits in really quite nicely. It's a shame that we can't have the glass completely removed from those habitats, because I think that would be quite nice, like to set a little limit where they can't actually go anywhere, but everything blends in a lot more. And then we are going to do the same in this section here. We're going to run planters all the way along, and I think what we'll do is we'll probably put a gift shop and an information kiosk in there. So I'll be putting the foundations in there, but I want to research some new shops before I actually put them in place. So for now, it's just going to be empty units, but with the flowers and the planters growing all the way through. Bit of a lighting issue, but we will sort that out. The next thing I want to do is put in some seats, some bins, because we are going to have a couple of vending machines in here at the entrance, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get littered. And then we're going to work on this central planter that I've built. I'm not actually going to build a planter now. I've decided that I'm going to make a water feature of some sort that just runs all the way along. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and get a nice rock fountain type thing in place. So we're going to make a nice border of plaster and then put some rock face, what are they called, cladding on there all the way around. So for now, we're working on this area. We're going to bring our wooden beams all the way along, and this nice little trim that we've created, I'm just boxing off here because that's going to give me a guide on where I end up putting the beams for one, and our new like information boards, the education boards, and it'll give me a nice barometer of where I want to squeeze in these one or two shops that I'm going to put down. So here we are putting the education boards in. We're going to actually have them sitting nice and flush in the gap created here, and then they're going to be almost framed by the foliage that we put in place, which I think will look really cool. So just duplicating and bringing these across so they stay vaguely uniform. The building isn't quite at like a 90-degree angle. It's kind of got a little bit of an offshoot, which did make it difficult for planning out this sort of thing, but if you catch that sort of thing early, you can kind of get into a rhythm of correcting any imperfections with it as you go, rather than having to go back and double check over everything. So I had the same issue when I was putting down the mulch. Everything just needed to be moved like a pixel over to get it all nice and uniform, but it didn't take too much. And as you can see, you can kind of see what we're going for with it, and I think this looks really cool. It just adds like an extra backdrop dimension to it. Another thing I forgot to mention when we did the little kind of look through is the actual exhibit education boards are not kind of flush like they usually are sat on the floor. We've integrated them into the exhibit itself, and they kind of, you can actually see that one in the background there. It sticks out a little. I'll need to tidy that up a touch, but we've got it so that it's almost like they're part of that little foundation. As you can see just on the left there, you can see how it's working, and we've done that all the way through just to save a bit of space, but also have that education board right in front so they can read that, look at it, and then look at the animal at the same time, rather than in my previous builds where they've kind of just been stuck to one side in this like really uncreative and basic way. So we're just finishing decorating. I wanted to try and keep flora and fauna from like the same regions, but that didn't really work out. I ended up just picking what I thought looked cool. But you can see here, we've got a nice like fallen tree and a nice rock face, but we did try to mix it up, so we'd have like a desert theme and then a different, like a tundra theme and different types all the way through. And then you can see here, we just need to do a little bit of adjustments on these shop fronts that we are putting in place. And it might even change again when I finally put the shop in, because we'll find that it doesn't actually sit flush at all. But where we're going with it, I'm really quite pleased with how this has turned out, and spending a lot of time in game designing one particular thing rather than setting your aims high and then messing it up all together and having to correct mistakes, which are my own personal criticism of what I've done with the Wild Africa habitat, which is why I've decided to take a little break from it and focus on this, because I always had a clear vision and a clear plan for what I wanted this to look like. But at the same time, we did need to do a little bit of work and get creative, and a little bit of a head scratcher at some point. And this was a little bit of a nightmare trying to find a tree that would work in here, because I wanted a nice tree that was kind of standing up tall and going all the way up to the top, which actually we will integrate into that Wild Africa habitat in a future episode when I go back and finally finish developing that, because there is still a little bit of work to do there. I just wanted to focus on doing something else for a little bit and see if it inspired my creative juices to do something a little bit different with that to really finish it off. But I'm very, very pleased with how this one's turned out. Actually, it didn't take me too long. I think all in all this build was about 2.5 to 3 hours. There were moments where I accidentally cut the camera, so you could see earlier on in the episode we seemed to jump ahead really quickly. And then we're just tidying this up because I thought this looked a little bit plain and boring, so we put in a little bit of variation here to sort it all out and make it stand out a little bit more. I decided I didn't like that, so we just had that theme running through the middle just to finish it off. We could even put a bit of signage up there as well. Now this was a little bit of a conundrum. I really wasn't sure what to do with this, but I concede that it did still look plain and boring. And all I did was put a few trims in for now, and then I wanted to run a basic wooden trim all the way around the top, just to give it something to stand out. Now because this is an entrance area, I don't really want to overcrowd it with too much stuff, but I still want it to look good. So we just dragged these logs all the way around and made a trim for the entire inside wall here, and that just carried on all the way around on both sides. The next thing I thought about doing was putting some planters and stuff in, and I thought that would look really nice kind of coming into the entrance and walking through this main corridor, and also have a clear separation between the staff pathway and the guest pathway. We just needed to duplicate this, flip it around and get it on the other wall there. And I do still think there's something missing from here. It may even just be a colour change to the plaster wall above or the plaster wall below, or there might be something a little bit more standout-ish that I do at a later date. But maybe we'll start our next episode with finishing that off and just tidying up this internal area. The other idea I had was to again use some of the new custom billboards to create almost like a carpet coming through this first entrance area with we could make some ground signs or something like that. So this is where we put in the pictures of our animals. As you can see, I just reminded myself of what I needed to create, and you will see later on what we end up with. Last thing I realised I'd forgotten was the habitat education boards for the saltwater crocodiles. I also have realised in recording the audio for this episode that I don't actually have any donation boxes here either, so that'll be something that we have to put in at some point. And this little roof from the tortoise habitat needs to be changed, and here again we got a few imperfections where the plaster walls have decided to automatically create a corner, and we're just tidying that up with some plaster panels and making sure that we don't come through the roof. You get a little glimpse of what we've done there, but you'll see when we do a big reveal at the end, which is coming up, don't worry. And this is us finishing off that fountain here. So I managed to get the water sitting quite nicely, and once we put in these rock based cladding pieces, everything looks a little bit more uniform, and we hide those glass barriers and it looks really cool. So having them on a horizontal bearing didn't work because everything was sticking out of one side, whereas having it vertical, you can just about slot things in nicely. It does look a bit samey, so we will look to change that at some point, maybe flip some pieces around, but for now I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out. And then finally we're going to put some tundra rock, big one right in the middle, and I'm going to have some little water features coming out of this rock. We can make it look a little bit more scenic and like it's supposed to be. Maybe put in some little pumps or something, or like a trickle of water coming out. But for now I was really happy with where we'd ended up, and it was just a case of getting the water matching so that it wasn't spilling out all over the floor. And I think that works really nicely. Put a little bit of water splashing in, and then I wanted to do some water jets shooting up, which you'll see later on. So here we are. As you can see, we've got one of each animal and then a world map. Our new education boards for conservation and things, a clearly marked out staff area, vending machines, and a lovely open space for people to walk into. On the left you can see we use some of the African planters and just put individual plants in there. Little bit of wall decor, but at the moment it is still a little bit plain, and there's maybe a little bit more work to do here just to finish this area off. To the right we've got our fountains, some lily pads in there, and that nice water feature right in the middle. And here you can see guests walking through, having plenty of space to enjoy things. Sensational scales, all of our exhibits with some lovely backdrops, and then these bamboo walls that we've got in, we're going to look to do something there as well, just to make things stand out a little bit more. What I might do is recreate the images that I've got coming through in the entrance on each of these, but we'll see how that goes. It might be that we actually get some information on the animals and put that in place. I think that would be a really neat idea. I haven't actually put the saltwater crocodile on that habitat exhibit, but we'll work that out. And then here, basic crocodile habitat. This is something that we do need to work on, and the tortoise habitat as well we need to work on. I also, obviously, I had to reroute all my staff and set new work zones, which is why things are looking a little bit dirty and unclean. And the next episode, we'll be sorting out this currently very ghastly exterior and just making everything stand out a lot more. I'm going to be doing a few structures on the roof and a few other things just to make it really nice and tidy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm really pleased with the progress we've made today, and I just want to thank you all for watching. Make sure you drop me a like, a comment, and a subscription on this channel because I really love making these videos. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.